welcome back to yet another episode of The Big Hit.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, everyone, to The Big Hit.
Welcome to today's episode of The Big Hit. I'm Katie Dotz.
Sports Jeopardy. I'm assuming everyone already knows how to play Jeopardy,
and welcome to The Big Hit's 2019 edition of Scrap for Your City.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of The Big Hit, where we're going to do Scrap for Your City this whole episode. We're going to start with the losers bracket and then move on to the winners. So you'll see who loses twice and you'll see who wins it all. So, but joining me on the judges panel is none other than Joey Chrisman and then Katie Dotz. So, gentlemen, if you three are ready, I'll just remind everyone of who we got. We have Luke Smeltz representing Boston, Michael Surma representing Nollins, that area, and also Kyle Scott representing Seattle. So, without further ado, we'll start with the first question. Gentlemen, which player defines your city's history? This is worth 1 point, and we'll just start with Luke since he's closest to the judges' table.
All right, well, for players that define the city's history of the fine city of Boston, I think it's pretty obvious, and I have to go with Bill Russell, the most winning player in our city's history. And the reason why I picked Bill Russell is because he set the standard for winning for the city of Boston. With 11 championships as a player and coach, that really raises the bar in what people expect throughout history. And so much so that they were getting on their other teams like the Patriots, the Red Sox, and the Bruins for not living up to what they created so early on. So I think you got to go with Bill Russell for setting such a gold standard for what we expect from Boston sports. And going on in the future, we've been able to meet that. And I think that's just a great example of our most important person in our city's history, player.
Drew Brees is without a doubt the most important sports figure in Nollins' history, without a doubt. Brees is the all-time leader in passing yards, and he's going to beat Tom Brady in passing touchdowns because he has more years left in him than Tom Brady. And Brees' team is way better than Brady's, and Brady is much older than Brees, and Brees is way more fit than Brady. So there you go. Brees defines Nollins' history, especially when you look at Super Bowl 44, when nobody expected him to beat Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning won the best of all time without a doubt, and Drew Brees went down to Miami and beat him. I expect the same thing this year when they go down to Miami and beat New England in the Super Bowl 10 years later. That's right. Nobody defines Nollins more than Drew Brees.
Yeah, nothing like bringing in a guy that's not even originally from your team to define your city's history. Real good.
Well, I guess that means it's my turn. So the city's history, you guys are picking, well, not you guys, but you are picking a player playing recently. That's not the history. You got to go way back, say the 80s, to Steve Largent to really define Seattle's history. One of the best receivers of all time, not just for Seattle, but in the NFL's history. By the time he retired, he held records in all 5 major receiving categories, including yards and receptions. He's not the tallest guy, he wasn't the fastest guy, but he could catch a gosh dang football, and he did it for Seattle his entire career. He was Seattle's first all-star. He was the first superstar for Seattle, because the Seahawks were the second major sports team Seattle ever had, the first one being the Seattle Pilots, who were there for a year and then moved to Milwaukee. So having a real sports figure in Seattle as good as Steve Largent is integral to the history of Seattle and part of a reason why it's such a big football town today.
And now he's irrelevant, just as the 1980s Seattle Seahawks were.
He's actually a governor.
In sports. In sports.
In Oklahoma.
It's not even, yeah, it's just like the Seattle Supersonics. He took his talents to Oklahoma as well.
Well, the Seahawks were actually good in the 80s, unlike the Patriots and the Saints.
And on that one, with 2-1, it's going to be Seattle is going to win that one out, with Steve Largent being slightly more important to the panel than that of Russell or Brees. But we'll move on to the next question. Joey, would you like to say this one?
Sure, I would. All right, guys. Next question is, what's the best sports moment in your city's history? Kyle, we can start with you.
Well, there's a bunch of great sports moments in Seattle. There's a bunch of sports moments, you know? There's a bunch of teams. But what's the best? Well, let me tell you. Let me set the scene for you. Game 5, 1995, ALDS, the division series against the big bad New York Yankees. 95, they have all the power players. They got Jeter. They got the rest of them. It's a big deal. Game 5, Mariners, they've been bad their entire history that they've been a team. But now they're in the ALDS. Game 5, though, extra innings. This is 11th inning. Real primetime hours here. Joey Cora's on second base with Ken Griffey Jr. on first. Who's up to bat? Edgar Martinez, who won the batting title that year, just the fact. 350 batting average. He hits a double, the double, not just any double. It's known as the double among Seattle fans because that double got Joey Cora and Ken Griffey Jr. home in time to win Game 5 of the ALDS, send them to the ALCS against the the Cleveland Indians, to their only real big playoff push. So, you know, if you can't get to the World Series, at least you can get to the ALCS. So that's probably the best. It saved baseball in Seattle, too. It kept the Mariners in there. Got them a new stadium, one of the best. It's gorgeous.
That's just tough. Hey, but congratulations to you guys. Something, I guess. What do you got for us, Mr. Baton Rouge?
Me personally, I would say bringing Joe Burrow to LSU, but I know the judges don't like college teams, so I just have to go with win Super Bowl 44 over the Indianapolis Colts. Coming out of halftime, kicking the onside kick when no one expected it, and they held the ball and kept the lead almost the whole second half and ended up pulling away from Peyton Manning's Indianapolis Colts, when everybody expected the Colts to go down to Miami and beat Drew Brees with his undersized versus Peyton Manning.
All right, well, I'm going to just jump on in then. For my Boston sports, I'm going to have to go with the Adam Vinatieri field goal to beat the Rams in the Super Bowl. This jump-started the dynasty that we have today with the New England Patriots, and that was the key moment, bringing the first Super Bowl to Boston. A lot of other options there. All of them have to do with winning championships, something that my competition can't really relate to except for Surmer's one.
Hey, we won a championship while not cheating with your Spygate and Deflategate. Let's not forget that.
We won a lot of championships without cheating.
Not
Define
in
a
football.
lot. How many is a lot?
Probably close to 20 since 2000.
How many with Adam Vinatieri?
4 of 6. Or no, 3 of 6.
Even worse.
We got Janikowski, the man.
And with this one, gents, we have a unanimous vote for Boston on this. There you go. That's more or less it. So 1 point for Seattle, 1 point for Boston, and Baton Rouge still looking to get on the board. But potentially you can, with this next question, maybe take the lead since it's worth 2 points. What's your Mount Rushmore of your city's best players? So since you are behind, Sarma, I'll allow you to go first.
My Mount Rushmore all time of my city's best players down in Nolans. First with the Saints, who are no longer the Aints when Drew Brees came to save them. Morton Anderson, second all time in points. Chris Paul, who led the Hornets to become something and actually get to the playoffs.
The Pelicans.
And Anthony Davis, of course, our best player of all time in New Orleans for basketball, which we were stupid enough to get rid of him. But anyway, Davis took us to the playoffs and actually won a series and swept them. So, yeah. I quit.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Seattle has had a lot of great players, at least 4. I'm going to start off with a team I don't talk about a lot, because I'm not huge into the Seattle Supersonics, right? Now the Oklahoma City Thunder or whatever, but Seattle Supersonics had their fair share of greats, namely Gary Paxton, or Gary Payton. Gary Payton. I don't know about basketball. Honestly, I don't know anything about it. I know he's good. He was a 9-time All-Star, and he played on the Supersonics. All right? Look. So my other three are like the real deal. Ken Griffey Jr. Like, if I didn't say Ken Griffey Jr., I was going to lose no matter what, because when you say Seattle or Mariners, you're like, oh yeah, they had Ken Griffey Jr., right? He's the lefty. He swings really nice. He hit a bunch of home runs. He had 6 straight seasons of over 40 home runs a season. You know, he's pretty good at baseball, I'd say. He kind of defined Mariners baseball until he left in 1999 when it was defined by Ichiro, another player on the Mount Rushmore, one of the best baseball players of all time ever, no matter what, any era, any other player you compare against him, he's at least as good, except for pitchers, I guess, because he didn't play pitcher. But, you know, he could hit like nothing. Great contact hitter. He could hit for power. People always say, oh, Ichiro never hit home runs. Ichiro didn't hit home runs. He hit 99 just on Seattle. So, I mean, he also hit one against Mariano Rivera, one of like 14 players ever to do that, right? He could also throw. He was great at baseball. That's really it. He's just great at baseball. I don't know how much I can really say before I'm repeating myself about that. And finally, you know, someone actually playing in Seattle currently, it's got to be Russell Wilson. You're like, Russell Wilson is probably the best quarterback Seattle's ever had. Maybe Matt Hasselbeck. He also took him to a Super Bowl, but he didn't win it. Russell Wilson won a Super Bowl. He took him to 2 straight. Not quite 6 in a row or whatever Tom Brady did, but 2 straight for Seattle is nothing to sneeze at. He's also going to be the MVP this year. So, I don't know. Russell Wilson.
All right, well, interesting choices from you guys. For my Mount Rushmore of players, I'm going to name 4 players. Each, it could be considered the greatest player in their individual sport. So we're going to start off with the man nicknamed the GOAT, Tom Brady, who is the winningest quarterback in NFL history with 6 Super Bowls, 3 MVPs. And man, does that man got smoking wife, am I right? Guy wins on and off the field.
I think he
Brady's
prefers
the man.
his kids.
Let's not get into that. But moving on. So we got NFL. We got NHL. Bobby Orr, considered the greatest defenseman in NHL history and arguably the greatest player in NHL history. He holds all the scoring records for NHL defensemen, and he is a GOAT himself. Going on to baseball, we have what some consider the greatest baseball player of all time. His nickname is quite literally the greatest hitter of all time, and that's Ted Williams. Ted Williams is the last man to hit over 400 in the major leagues. He is also a Hall of Famer, World Series champion, league MVP, and 19-time All-Star. Ted Williams, GOAT status. And finally, we go to the NBA, where we have the one, the only, Bill Russell. They made an MVP award after this man. That's how many championships he won. It's just the fact the man is kind of the GOAT if we're going to go off the championship resume that we use for Michael Jordan. But different standards for different people. Bill Russell just simply wins, and he happens to be on my Mount Rushmore of Boston sports.
Well, 2 things. Bill Russell lost earlier on this, right? Didn't he define your city's history?
Yeah.
And he lost to Steve Largent, so he doesn't win. And number 2, you said Ted Williams is the hit king. Ted Williams, no. Who's the guy on the Reds is the hit king?
He's not the greatest
What's
hitter
his
of all
name?
time.
Well, you said he was the hit king. And Ichiro is
He's
really the
banned
hit
from
king.
baseball.
Pete Rose was
Pete
the
Rose
hit
is
king.
banned from baseball.
Not Ted Williams. And Ichiro had more hits anyway in a single season and ever, more than Ted Williams.
Yeah, but if you look at his whole body of work with home runs, average, runs batted in,
Ichiro could hit to left field.
he had quite literally one of the greatest offensive careers in Major League history. Also, Bill Russell is considered one of the greatest NBA basketball players of all time. So I kind
Not
of have
according
to
to the
put him
judges.
on Mount Rushmore. Well, you just compared a football player to a basketball player. What do you want me to do with that? Bill Russell, 11 championships. He has an award, an MVP award, Finals MVP award named after him. That's greatness right there. You can find him on the NBA Legends page as well.
Oh, yeah?
Yep, something you can't find your wide receiver from the 80s on.
Oh, I can't find him on the NBA's website. Good to know.
Legends
What does that
page.
even mean?
I don't know.
What's his ranking in NFL, in Madden 20, dude? Shut up.
Ooh, somebody's salty. Let's head over to the judges to find out what they think.
And with that, with 2-1, Boston will take this. I did have a joke on my board written not Nollins, and then I saw that Katie Dotts and Joey split the vote, so I was like, oh, I guess I have to actually put what I was going to vote for. So anyway, but with a score of 3-0-1, Boston will win the losers bracket. Seattle coming close next to that, and Surma, you came here and you did your best, but then you said you quit, so I couldn't vote for you anymore. So, but it's all right. I respect it. The Tigers are at least first in the playoff bracket for college football for the time being, so you do have that going for you. But we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with the winners bracket after this.
We'll detonate the smokestacks, dissipate my boiling blood. A conglomerate of drawbacks got me paralyzed and choking on my own. We'll
Landmines, landmines, I think you're so fine. I wish that I could call you mine.
From ashes to ashes, ignite the matches of passion. My weekend's gone in a flash, and I just don't know what happened.
Send me postcards from where you're staying tonight. Call me up once or twice to let me know you're alright.
Pack of empty cigarettes, babe. You're on my mind. I can't forget the sweet, sweet sound of that golden sunset.
All right, everyone, welcome back. We're going to do the winners bracket now, which is going to be Stephen Landing Jr. with LA going against Jake Taylor, the reigning champion, with Pittsburgh. Taheem would be here with Philadelphia, but due to some conflicts, he won't be here, so he's been eliminated, but that's all right. So, but just getting right into it, we're going to do with which decade in yours, let's try that again. Which decade in your city's history defines it in sports? And we'll start with Stephen, since he's closest.
All right, so the decade that defines LA has to be the 2000s. They won 11 championships that entire decade. That was the 11 out of the 26 that they ever won, and 5 of them came from the Lakers, led by Kobe Bryant, Shaq, just Phil Jackson was the head coach, just a phenomenal team in itself. But it wasn't just, it wasn't just the men's sports. You have to give a little love to the Sparks, who won 3 championships that decade. So a little love to them there. And then, of course, the LA Galaxy, their soccer team, won 2 during that decade. And that is 11 altogether. That is just incredible for a city in itself. I mean, LA is just phenomenal. They ought not to forget the Ducks won their only championship during that decade as well. And so, I mean, if you're looking at any decade, you have to give it to the 2000s just because of the amount of players, the amount of talent that came from LA. I mean, 11 championships is an insane amount for just one specific decade.
Mm-hmm. It would be good if it was more in the 4 major sports that really anybody cared about. But so I'm going to say the defining decade for my city would be, I would say, judge it off winning. Everybody's like, the 70s, that's where the Pittsburgh Steelers started that dynasty. The Pirates are still winning World Series. But it's not about how you start. It's about how you finish. And everybody would say nowadays, in the modern era of sports, it's more competitive, it's more hard-hitting, it's just harder to win championships. And that's why the mid-2000s to the mid-2010s was the most defining moment of our history, because it's about how we finish. We started winning, went through some slumps, and then we bounced right back. You had the Pittsburgh Steelers coming up, They get new coaches. They have a new quarterback, Big Ben Roethlisberger. What do? They go to 3 Super Bowls, win 2 of them. Same thing. We transition. Everybody thinks, oh, we're losing Lemieux. We lost Yager. The Penguins are about to go bankrupt. Nope. What do? They win 3 Stanley Cups, been to 4 of them. So in that time span, we won 5 championships, been to 7 total. And the Pittsburgh Pirates, the laughingstock of the MLB, made the playoffs 3 times that year. They're the second-place team in the entire Major League Baseball. Of course, the St. Louis Cardinals were number 1, so they had to play the wild card game because they got screwed over in a division like that. But still, 3 very successful years. 2 of those years in the playoffs, they lost to the team that ultimately went up to win the World Series. So it's not even like they were competitive. We brought them up from the dirt. They're still a terrible market. I mean, we have a very small market definitely compared to LA.
And you picked a team that hasn't won since the 70s, a
Yeah.
championship in the Pittsburgh Pirates. So what does that really say about your city?
That's what I'm saying.
You say the city of champions.
Yeah, because we have 3 teams and 2 of them won 5 championships.
But you say the city of champions when you only won how many during that decade? 5? We won 11. 11.
Yeah, but you didn't win one for baseball, so didn't win one for football, and you didn't win one for hockey. Well, Anaheim, LA Kings, it doesn't matter. The Kings started winning in 2010, so I mean, from 2000 to 2010, Anaheim would technically not be counted as LA because I think that would be that Los Angeles Kings. So, I mean, if the Pittsburgh market was big enough to have a soccer team, we'd probably be winning. Exactly. So that's why they're putting product on the field. They're taking a small market. That defines our history. Listen, we don't have to have all the money in the world. We have dedicated fans who can have a drought of 20-something years missing the playoffs. Our fans are dedicated enough to show up to the games and make sure that the product on the field wins. And that's 3 playoff visits, 2 Super Bowls, 3 Stanley Cups.
You say the same thing about the Lakers. The Lakers went to how many championships during their era? They were led by arguably the best basketball player of that time in Kobe Bryant. I mean, and then you had one of the best centers of all time in Shaquille O'Neal. They didn't stop winning. You know, you have an entire decade in which they just don't stop winning. Mm-hmm. And when you have that many parades, I mean, it's parade year after year after year, and you're led by so much great talent that how can you say you're the city of champions when you won almost half of the amount of championships that my city won in 1 decade?
Well, first of all, no one's having a parade for a soccer championship. That's just a fact. Second of all,
they have soccer is very, very, very big in LA right now. They have the biggest rivalry in Major League Soccer right now, and that's El Tráfico between the 2 LA teams. So you can't say that. I mean, they're jam-packing those stadiums. There's over 50,000 people that are going to these games. So how can you say that soccer isn't cared about in LA?
Well, it can be cared about in LA, but it's not respected around America.
It's the fastest growing sport in the United States.
Well, we're talking about that decade. So let's go back and talk about that decade. The reason why LA has so many championships is because they're just ring chasing. They just go to LA because they got all the money, they have all the fame and fortune. But no, you know what? Pittsburgh has the players. Guess what? In that decade, Ben Roethlisberger is still part of the team. Mike Tomlin's still part of the team. I mean, Jerome Bettis still waving his terrible towel when he got into the Hall of Fame. They played Renegade.
Hey,
Crosby's still on the team. Malkin. We have core players that stay with the championship.
Hey, Jake, what's your opinion on Mike Tomlin now? Is he winning now?
He's actually second in the division with a backup and third-string quarterback, which, granted, is better than almost any other coach can do in the NFL right now.
And in a horrible division this year.
Oh, well, I mean, the Indianapolis Colts just beat...
You have a team that's 0-8. You have a team that has won 2 games.
I'm not talking about. I'm talking about in that decade, we won a Stanley Cup the same year. We won a Super Bowl. So, I mean, you can't deny that. It defines. See, here's how it defines. I'm answering the question. Defines our history because despite starting winning, and then we went in a little bit of a slump, and we're back at it. But these players care more about the city. They're not winning for rings and leaving like Shaquille O'Neal or like LeBron James just coming to the city just for LA. Like,
why wouldn't you want to just come to get a ring?
Because you want to come to play for the city of Pittsburgh because they care about the players, they care about the fans, they care about the team. Because we are the city of champions. We're the fastest franchise to ever win 5 Stanley Cups. We're the winningest Super Bowl, and we're the winningest football team.
But you just said that
we have 5 World Series.
They come to LA to win championships, though. So
when they leave,
I mean, that wouldn't you consider that a city of champions?
No,
if you just keep on winning championships left
they come
and right,
for the money, which end up you can create a super team.
How
inorganic in that?
Helps you win
inorganic is that? Imagine in the same decade you win. I mean, in this decade, it's the biggest game of them all, the biggest sport. You've been to the Super Bowl 3 times in 1 decade. When everybody's counting you out, you're the 6th seed to go on to win the Super Bowl. You know, you have Hall of Famer after Heinz Ward, Hall of Famer, Trump Hall future Hall of Famer. Jerome Bettis, Hall of Famer. Ben Roethlisberger, future Hall of Famer. Oh, not to mention, you look at the hockey side of things. You have Crosby, Hall of Famer. Malkin, Hall of Famer. Fleury, Hall of Famer. Kunitz, Hall of Famer.
Just because you're a Hall of Famer doesn't mean that you.
They're just in that decade.
Doesn't mean that you win
they care about
championships year
products.
in, year out.
We have 3 major sports teams. All 3 of them were successful. 2 of them won multiple championships, and 1, despite being one of the lowest markets in the MLB, made second best team in baseball.
All right, gentlemen, that was a lot. I didn't know when to cut you off because you guys kept us interested, but this one, it was very close. I was very torn, but on this question, we're going to go with 2-1. It's going to be Pittsburgh. I think, Jake, you made a great argument on that, but also it's very hard to deny 11 championships. But that was only worth 1 point, and this next question is worth 1, so you guys can bring it back to even very quickly. Chris, would you like to?
Sure. Okay, the next question is, talk about a player in your city whose actions have benefited the city off the field. Jake, we're going to start with you.
All right. The picks were almost endless. Possibilities were endless for this question here in Pittsburgh, but I want to talk about one of arguably the greatest hockey player of all time, who's actually more successful as an owner. Somebody who beat cancer. So, I mean, he's winning Stanley Cups, beating cancer. So that's technically off the ice. He's winning off the ice. And then retires, he gets into the Hall of Fame, comes back and still wins with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And then he has to retire. And here's what he's done. Here's how he's benefited the city off the ice. So the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to go bankrupt. They were going bankrupt. They were going to go move to Kansas City. What does Mario Lemieux do? He buys the team. He rebuilds the team, strips it down, starts over. That's when they draft in a row. Not a big deal. Marc-Andre Fleury, Evgeny Malkin, Sidney Crosby, and Jordan Staal in 4 straight years. Talk about a rebuild right there. You know what? He saves the city from moving, wins more Stanley Cups as an owner than he does as a player, which you thought was not possible because he's one of the greatest hockey players of all time. He started the Mario Lemieux Foundation he got diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, so he raises millions of dollars a year with that. Not to mention how he's benefited me specifically. So the Mario Lemieux Foundation builds like deck hockey rinks in the Pittsburgh area, which is my biggest sports, what I grew up playing, which I love. So he's even personally affected me by granting me opportunities to go out and just around Pittsburgh and play some hockey for kids that can't afford to ice skate and things like that. So he's won more Stanley Cups as an owner. He rebuilt the whole thing. He sets the precedent in hockey, how to win, how to be a winner. You see, they bought a new stadium. They tore down the Mellon Arena. They started a new stadium. He comes walking out. You know, it's a huge standing ovation. He pours some of the old ice on the new ice. All was good again. He can rally a team. He tells them who to draft. We all know Sidney Crosby, the greatest hockey player of our generation, lived with Lemieux. We called him on the phone, said, "Yo, why don't you come live with me so I can show you how to be good?" What do you know? 3 Stanley Cups, not a big deal. So I think Mario Lemieux has affected the whole Pittsburgh. It's the reason why the Pittsburgh Penguins are the most efficient NHL team in history, the fastest to ever win 5. That's because he won 2 as a player, won 3 as an owner. He's flawless. He does everything right. He does charity right, philanthropy right. He owns the team right. He plays right. Everything about Mario Lemieux defines and benefits Pittsburgh.
So my guy has benefited millions upon millions of people, and that's Magic Johnson. You know, he is the face of HIV, and he has donated. Similar to Jake, just that my guy, he just continues to donate millions upon millions of dollars each and every year. But my guy is kind of the face of an entire disease, and it wasn't talked about a whole ton. It was kind of just one of those things that you kind of just shun people away with HIV. But once Magic, he had to retire because of HIV, and he's been living with it since. And I mean, that's just a disease that never goes away. But he still donates the money that he has donated over $20 million to HIV victims. And I mean, it's a global disease. Cancer is kind of like a global disease, but like this affects millions upon millions of people, people that don't have enough money to, take care of themselves, especially in places like Africa. And he's helped millions upon millions of people in LA as well by donating money to help people to go to college as well. He's donated over $5 million to people that are unfortunate and don't have enough money to go to college. But Magic Johnson has been the face of HIV since the 90s, and he had to retire because of it. But I mean, he's just helped millions upon millions of people and continues to donate money year after year after year. He has a contract, I mean, even to donate over at least $1 million every single year to benefit people that are struggling with HIV, to help them to live with this horrible, horrible disease that essentially has no cure. And I mean, Magic Johnson is just the guy that you think about when you think about HIV.
And obviously that's great what he's doing philanthropy, but when you look back on what he's doing to help the city, actually he did such a poor job. He just quit last year for running the LA Lakers. He said, I can't do this anymore. LeBron James, you're taking over. I'm out of here. I quit. I can't help the city. I can't help the team.
But he helped those kind of players. He helped bring in those kind of players like LeBron. He helped bring in Anthony Davis, who Surma mentioned earlier. But I mean, the whole big thing is that he hasn't, I mean, he's even helped the LA Dodgers. He's helped them build that kind of team. But he just, he's not just an owner. He's, you know, just a global figure who helps people with this disease.
Oh yeah, I'm not denying that whatsoever. He's very effective in that. But when it comes to actually benefiting the city off the field, like his work as an owner is abysmal because he actually quit and resigned because he couldn't handle it. And that's just what I'm trying to say.
Do you have anything else? Do you guys have any more, or do you want to leave it there?
I'll leave it there.
We'll leave it there. We'll leave it there.
I always want to ask before, you know, if there's any last rebuttal. So just give us a moment to vote on this one. All right, and on that one, again, with a vote of 2-1, it will be Pittsburgh taking that. So it is 2-0, but this question is worth 2 points, which means if that, we'll have to go into an extra sudden death question, which we'll get there potentially. But this final question is, who is the most overlooked player in your city's history, and why were they important? Worth 2 points. Steve, since you are down, you are going to go first.
All right, I'm going to go with someone that, you know, when you think about LA, you don't really think about, and that's Landon Donovan from the LA Galaxy. He has come in and he has done wonders to the city of LA and for soccer as a whole. He has helped an entire nation several times. I mean, he won 6 championships altogether, 4 of which came in LA. You know, you mentioned they don't have parades. They had parades for all of them. He helped bring in star-studded athletes like David Beckham. And, I mean, you brought in a global superstar just because you're just helping the city of LA in such a great way. And, I mean, it wasn't just what he did in LA. It was what he did as a nation. I mean, one of the best soccer players in United States history. He helped bring soccer closer to the United States. And as far as I'm concerned, when you help an entire nation and by helping an entire city as well to bring in star-studded athletes, and I mean, like I said, now LA is one of the biggest spots for soccer in the United States. So he's helped that city. He's even helping, you know, trying to start up a new soccer team as well. So he's investing all the money that he has from his playing days to help build a new soccer team as well. He's helped soccer become a known name, not only in the state of California, but in the United States as a whole.
Yeah, I'm obviously not going to deny that. And what I'm going to say to that is, from what you just said, he is not overlooked. Like, Landon Donovan is literally the most well-known United States soccer player ever. Like, Landon Donovan is that guy.
But
he's not overlooked. Like, he's the best U.S.-born soccer player on the national team ever.
Whenever you think of LA soccer and the way that it's grown in the United States, you think of players like David Beckham, who, because of David Beckham, showed the entire world that the Major League Soccer exists as a whole. So when you help bring in one player that's helped create an entire league in itself. I mean, there's just been so many teams that have come in, and I mean, he's helped bring in other players as well.
Oh yeah, I definitely think Landon Donovan's influential for sure. 100%. He's huge with that. But I'm saying, like, he is not overlooked. Like, he is getting credited for what he's doing.
When you think of LA, do you think of Landon Donovan? Do you think?
Well, no.
Exactly. So he's overlooked in that regard.
Oh, in that regard, yeah, I would say for sure, yeah. But I would say that definitely the most owned U.S. soccer jersey is Landon Donovan for sure across the nation.
That actually isn't. It's actually Christian Pulisic right now.
Well, right now, but shout out Christian Pulisic, actually, from the area.
Hershey born.
My player would be a player who was on a team to win 4 Super Bowls. I mean, everybody in this room here, they know Lynn Swann. Most of them don't even know John Stallworth. John Stallworth, 4-time Super Bowl champion, 3-time Pro Bowler. Obviously, he's going to be overlooked when you're, first of all, on a team with that star-studded those many Hall of Famers, and across from you, on your same offense, you have Terry Bradshaw, Franco Harris, John Stallworth, Lynn Swann, and then you have John Stallworth. John Stallworth was one of the best teammates. You can go back, watch all of America's games, watch all the 70 winning Steelers. They all say John Stallworth was the best teammate on the field. You can't deny, we weren't there, we don't know. I'm taking these guys' words for it. They played with them. But he was in a draft with Jack Lambert, Mike Webster, Lynn Swann, John Stallworth. All 3 of those names I named before John Stallworth are names that that are household names in Pittsburgh. They're hanging up on people's walls. Nobody's got a John Stallworth jersey. Everybody's got Lambert. Everybody's got Bradshaw. Everybody's got Harris. But they don't have John Stallworth. And John Stallworth was so vital to winning those 4 Super Bowls. In the time span where he was playing with Lynn Swann from 74 to 82, John Stallworth has 100 less yards than him and 7 less touchdowns and 100 less receptions. So, it's the same production value. Still, they're producing the same amount of winning on the field. He's still in the Hall of Fame too, and everybody looks past that. You're looking at.
So you picked a Hall of Famer that's overlooked.
Yeah, because there's so many other Hall of Famers from that team. You can't tell me Bradshaw, Harris, Blyer, Lambert, Ham, Webster.
Obviously, you weren't overlooked if you were voted into the Hall of Fame.
Well, no. Obviously, too. The same thing as Landon Donovan, but when you zoom back, he's not even might not even be in the top 10 players that just the common knowledge player names off of those 70 winning Steeler team. If that's not overlooked, then I don't know what is. He's literally producing the same numbers as Lynn Swann, and everybody's saying Lynn Swann this, Lynn Swann that. Maybe because he just made that one great catch and that just put him above John Stallworth, but John Stallworth was still producing the same amount as all these players. He was so vital to the championships, but he doesn't get Franco Harris as a statue. Terry Bradshaw, still all over TV. Everybody loves Bradshaw in the city of Pittsburgh. that whole steel curtain, Joe Green, you're thinking of all these players on this team. No, I guarantee you, John Stallworth is not even in the top 10 when you say, he's just so important too because he won 4 championships, started the dynasty. He's just so low-key about it. He just sits back and, he doesn't need the fame. He can sit back and twiddle his fingers.
So because he was on a team with so many other great players, he was overlooked. He still won 4 championships. He's still in the Hall of Fame. So obviously, by the committee, he wasn't overlooked.
He got credit where credit was due. But not by fans because, you couldn't tell me who John Stallworth is.
But if he was voted in, then, obviously he wasn't overlooked.
To the Hall of Fame voters, yeah. Just like the...
All right, gentlemen. Well, that was very good. We loved all of that. And we're going to have to find another question here because there's a unanimous vote on L.A. with Landon Donovan. So just give us one quick moment, and we'll be right back with a bonus question. All right, everyone. We're back with our last question. It has no point value. Whoever wins this question wins Scrap for Your City. So, gentlemen, we need you to name something. It can be a player, a team, event, whatever, from your city which changed the culture of sports. And Steve, we'll have you go first.
All right. So the player that I thought of immediately was Magic Johnson. From the 80s in itself, he won 5 championships. He redefined his position in so many ways. He came in as a point guard, but was able to play all 5 positions, even taking over for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar during the finals one time because he was injured. So he had to play the center position, and he was just one of the best players in Lakers history and in NBA history, but also was, like I said earlier, the face of HIV. And they have an entire 30 for 30 just about one event, and that is the announcement. Just him in 1991 announcing his retirement because of HIV, And I mean, Magic Johnson not only doing stuff on, not only during his playing career, also off the court, but I mean, if you want to talk about one player that has changed the culture of sports, it's Magic Johnson. I mean, look at Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is 6'10", but plays the point guard because they have examples like Magic Johnson, who was 6'9", but was able to play every position. And I mean, he has completely changed the game of basketball. There's no such thing as a position anymore. Just because, before there was one player that played a specific position. If you were smaller, you played point guard, and that's it. If you were taller, you played power forward or center, and that was it. But Magic Johnson, he was a tall guy, but he was able to play the point guard, the shooting guard. He was able to play the center position of all positions in the biggest game of the year in the finals. So if you want to talk about one player that's changed the culture of sports, I'm going to have to say Magic.
I would say Magic Johnson didn't change the culture. I'd say he was before his time. You look at all athletes nowadays, especially NBA players, they can play all positions. Those guys, big, small, they are just athletes. And so was Magic Johnson. He was just an athlete back in the day where in the NBA, it wasn't that competitive. You could have two guys like Kareem.
It wasn't that competitive.
And
are you serious?
I mean, look how many kids are playing basketball now. I mean, you look at the NCAA tournament. That was not like that back in the day.
He was playing when
he was just an athlete.
He was playing when Michael was playing. He was playing when
Yeah, Michael Jordan. He was playing when someone on his own team was better.
He's playing with the bad boys of the Pistons era. He was playing against the Celtics when they had their big team. I mean, come on.
That's only that's what I'm saying. Like, you could have a team back in the NBA where you had two good guys on the team, and those four teams are the only successful ones. That's why they're winning so many championships. I mean, look at the modern NBA now. You have superstars on every single team. It doesn't even matter. You can have guys like Luka Doncic coming over from across the season. He's D'ing up LeBron James. That's not going to happen when Magic Johnson's playing. I mean, basketball just wasn't that big. You can't help it. I think he was just an athlete before his time. A team that changed the culture of sports, specifically my sport, was the 70s Steelers. You can't say it enough. They had 10 Hall of Famers on that team. Everybody from that dynasty on was just chasing what the Steelers invented. They're chasing how they draft, how they scout. They were having 4 Hall of Famers in one draft class. They are literally so influential. The NFL 100 just came up with the most top 100 game changers, and the Pittsburgh Steelers scout was on that list because that's how good he was in the 70s. So they were copying how they scouted. They were copying how Chuck Noll coached. 4 Super Bowls. I mean, yeah, you look at it in coaching in general. You can have all the talent you want, but if you don't have a good coach, you're not going to be successful. You can only go as far as the coach lets you go, and that's a great coach.
Yeah,
everybody's still chasing that dynasty.
The Lakers head coach was a Hall of Famer.
They're chasing. They're chasing those 4 Super Bowls. They're chasing dynasty. They had to make rule changes. They literally had to make rule changes in the sport because that defense was too dominant. They had to put the Mel Blount rule in to give wide receivers an actual chance. So literally changed a rule in the sport because they were so dang good. I mean, you look, since that begun, every single franchise in the NFL has just been chasing what they started. Finally, the New England Patriots finally just caught us with 6 Super Bowls, but to start the 4, what did the dynasty with the 49ers do? They're just chasing what the Steelers started, and the whole time they're a ground and pound run game. Guess who started that? Franco Harris and Rocky Bleier, a dual threat running back.
The ground and pound in the NFL has been in existence since the very start. In fact, the forward pass didn't come into existence until the 60s. So, ground and pound wasn't really, something that was very inventive because it was used by every single team.
Yeah, but they weren't winning with it. So they got the dual-wheel running backs, Rocky Bleier, Franco Harris.
If every team is using it, then every team is winning. So how did you change it?
Yeah, the dual throw running back. I mean, who else is running 2 running backs like that with Rocky Bleier, Franco Harris? I mean, you're just saying
Dolphins.
All right, yeah, 1 championship. You can't be bashing the Dolphins when it doesn't matter. So I'm talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm not talking about anybody else. I'm talking about how they changed. You can't deny that they literally had a rule change for Mel Blount called the Mel Blount rule. Change the sport of the culture.
Because he was jumping on top of wide receivers.
Look at all these, John Stallworth, Lynn Swann. They started the deep threat, Terry Bradshaw just bombing balls deep. They started like they dual threat everywhere on offense. Not to mention the steel curtain. They're letting you average 10 points a game. You're not scoring more than 10 points on that defense. So bad that they had to change rules that they just invented the steel curtain defense. That's like the 70s Steelers is the epitome of perfect football. Like, you still hear people talking about to this day how good the 70 Steelers were and how influential they were to the sport. When you go to a sporting event and you see towels waving around in the air, guess who started that? Myron Cope and the 70 Steelers with the terrible towel. They started that. I mean, they started a whole wave. Like, the 70 Steelers started in sports, that bond between a team and a city, they really brought that together. Like the steel curtain, the Steelers, like hard-hitting, gritty football team in your face. In Pittsburgh, the fans, the residents, the citizens of Pittsburgh, they gravitate towards that so much that's the city of Pittsburgh. Like, us fans, that's what we like. Consider ourselves like all gritty, hard nosed. Like, that's literally that's how Pittsburgh was founded. That's how we're going to keep going. That's how our sports keep winning. We keep being successful. We are called the City of Champions because they started winning. They started winning for the sport of football. We still are the most well-traveled team thanks to them. We are the winningest team thanks to them. And Belichick was just chasing Chuck Noll. Every other coach chasing Chuck Noll. Everybody was chasing Bradshaw's 4 Super Bowls. Everybody was chasing that success that the Pittsburgh Steelers invented in football.
And my team won 5 times in 1 decade. So,
well, you're talking about Magic Johnson.
Magic Johnson with Kareem.
With Kareem, the second highest point scorer of all time now.
James Worthy. I mean, there's just so many Hall of Famers on the Lakers.
Magic Johnson wasn't the best player on that team, let alone.
Yeah, he was.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was better than Magic Johnson.
He redefined the position. You will even look at in the history books and say, you know, when they're ranking players, they'll say that Magic is ahead of Kareem just because he was influential in what he was able to do. Like I said, he was able to play every position on the court. I mean, he was the ball handler as a center at times. So, I mean, if you want to talk about great teams, I mean, just look in the 80s for the Lakers. They won 5 championships during 1 decade, and Magic was there his entire career with the Lakers. So I mean, you want to say about how, you know, the league wasn't that tough and everything, but I mentioned the league was rough. I mean, you can look back at some of the tapes, and they were ripping each other to shreds.
Because it wasn't even the sport of basketball. Like, they just weren't staying true to the sport. I'm saying Magic Johnson was a great athlete in a time where basketball was just position players. I mean, basketball players now, they're not just position players. I mean, look at Anthony Davis. Literally, a man of that stature can play anywhere on the court that he wants. He can bang He
can't play the point guard. Could he play the point guard?
He doesn't
Absolutely
have to play
not.
the point guard.
Absolutely not.
I mean, look at athletes nowadays.
Not.
I'm just saying, basketball back then, it is known that everybody makes that argument about the NBA. So I'm just saying it's illegitimate. If we want to bring up any other thing, I could tell you there are more rule changes the Pittsburgh Steelers brought to the NFL that just weren't in the 70s, but I'm not going to say it. I could bring up the only team to ever win back-to-back Stanley Cups in the salary cap era when literally the rules are made not to win.
Jake, does the 70 Steelers have an entire documentary about them?
Oh, yes.
No.
Yes.
No, on
Every
ESPN?
America's game.
On ESPN? On ESPN?
Yeah, Rocky. Look at Rocky Bleier. The man got to have his foot blown off in Vietnam, and he won 4 Super Bowls. Look, the greatest play of all time. NFL 100 just voted on the greatest play of all time. Oh, the 70 Steelers. Guess what? In the top 10, another play from the 70 Steelers in the top 10. They changed the culture of football.
And the 86-87 Lakers are one of the best NBA teams of all time. So you can't even make that argument because they're a top 2 team, top 3 team of all time. So you can't even make that argument. But I have an entire 30 for 30 dedicated to one man.
I could make the argument that Kobe Bryant did the same thing in a more competitive league with the LA Lakers and Magic Johnson did.
Kobe doesn't have a 30 for 30 about him.
Yes.
Magic has a 30 for 30 about him.
Kobe Bryant won a Grammy. He has a short film that won an Academy Award. Like, he's got it all. You can look at all these tapes. Shaq's definitely, they have a whole documentary about just Shaq sitting down with Kobe Bryant talking about it. I've seen it. Yes, you can look it up.
Kobe Bryant definitely has. It's not a 30 for 30 though. There's a 30 for 30 dedicated
30 for 30 or how many other
dedicated to one moment in history. That is the announcement 1991.
I'm saying those 5 championships that they won back in the day with Magic Johnson, other NBA teams not only have done the same, they've done it better. I'm saying the 70 Steelers, people are still chasing that perfection.
Hey, do I need to remind you that they were going against the Celtics during that era as well, who had Larry Bird and, all those great players. But, just saying.
All right, gentlemen. And with that, that was a whole lot of good arguments, a whole lot of good things. But this one, the winner unanimously, we have the 4-1-2 Pittsburgh. So returning as a champion again is Jake Taylor.
Shocker.
And Steve, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And there we go. But we want to thank you all so much for tuning in to the Big Hit. And just remember, Minnesota and Maya Moore were robbed last year. But that's okay. Shout out to Mike Costa. We hope you're watching. Everyone else, we'll see you next week.